The Quelgroth warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their obsidian hulls absorbing the sun's light rather than reflecting it. Admiral Zextal stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, his four eyes fixed on the blue-green world that filled the main view screen. Earth, the primitive planet that had somehow managed to catch the Quelgroth Empire's attention through its crude radio transmissions. Preliminary scan complete. Admiral, announced Science Officer Venra, her crystalline exoskeleton clicking as she moved between monitoring stations. Atmosphere highly oxidizing. Radiation levels from their star would be lethal to our kind without protection. Primitive artificial satellites in orbit. No energy shields detected. No quantum communications network. Their most advanced weapons appear to be chemical-propelled projectiles and crude fission devices. Zextal's upper lip curled in what passed for a smile among his species, exactly as expected. A young race that somehow survived despite their planet's hostile conditions. They'll make excellent subjects for study before we begin the terraforming process. The bridge crew continued their work with mechanical precision. Each member of the species evolved for maximum efficiency. The Quelgroth had long since engineered away the inefficiencies of biological evolution, their bodies now more machine than organic, their minds enhanced by quantum processors that eliminated emotional interference. Deploying observation drones, reported Tactical Officer Myrtal. Standard protocol for primitive species assessment. Hundreds of spherical drones, each no larger than a human fist, detached from the Quelgroth fleet and descended toward Earth's atmosphere. They would provide detailed intelligence about the planet's defenses and population centers before the formal first contact began. But something was wrong. Admiral, Myrtal's voice carried an unusual note of concern. The drones, they're malfunctioning. Zextal turned sharply. Impossible. Our technology is perfect. Nevertheless, Myrtal brought up a holographic display. 87% of the drones are experiencing critical systems failures. The remaining units are reporting conflicting data. On the screens around them, the drone feeds showed chaos. Some simply went dark. Others transmitted impossible readings. Atmospheric composition changing by the second, temperature fluctuations that defied physics, electromagnetic interference that shouldn't exist with such primitive technology. Launch a second wave, Zextal ordered. Full diagnostic protocols active. The second wave of drones met the same fate. Then the third. Admiral, Venra's voice was tight with confusion. I'm detecting unusual patterns in their satellite network. The primitives seem to be adapting their communications protocols in real time. They're learning from each attempt we make to analyze them. Zextal's perfect composure cracked slightly. This wasn't in any of their first contact protocols. Primitive species were supposed to be predictable, their responses limited by their technological development. But these humans, sir, Myrtal's cry drew everyone's attention. Multiple small objects approaching the fleet. Primitive chemical propulsion, but their trajectories are impossible. They're changing course without thrust. The objects were missiles, by human standards, nothing that should concern a Quelgroth warship. But they move like living things, adapting their course with impossible precision, somehow slipping through the gaps in the fleet's automated defense grid. Impossible, Zextal whispered, watching as the first missile impacted the shields of a support vessel. The shield held, but the readings made no sense. The explosion wasn't just kinetic or nuclear, it was somehow interfering with the quantum field generators that powered their ships. How? Venra demanded, her scientific certainty shaken. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They couldn't possibly. Sir, Communications Officer Relta interrupted, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only, primitive radio waves. Let us hear it, Zextal ordered, preparing himself for pleas for mercy or primitive threats. Instead, a calm human voice filled the bridge. Quelgroth Fleet, this is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Initiative. We appreciate you taking the time to test our defensive capabilities. Your drones have provided excellent data on your technological level. We look forward to continuing this exchange of information." The bridge fell silent. In all their centuries of expansion, no primitive species had ever spoken to them like this, as equals, or worse, as teachers evaluating students. "Sir," Myrtle reported, voice shaking, "I'm detecting energy signatures throughout their satellite network. They're not primitive communications devices at all. They're a weapon system we've never seen before." Zextal stared at the viewing screen, at the seemingly primitive planet below. For the first time in his centuries of service, he felt something the Quelgroth had engineered away generations ago. Fear. The humans weren't primitive. They were something far more dangerous, unpredictable. In an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the holographic display of the Quelgroth fleet with intense concentration. Around her, dozens of scientists and military personnel worked in focused silence, their faces lit by the blue glow of quantum processing arrays. Technology reverse-engineered from a crashed Quelgroth scout ship 3 years ago. "They're still trying to breach our cyber defense net," reported Captain James Rodriguez, his fingers dancing across a neural interface. "Same predictable patterns. They really can't comprehend that their technology could be vulnerable to primitives like us." Sarah nodded, allowing herself a small smile. The Quelgroth's greatest weakness was their absolute certainty in their own superiority. They'd evolved themselves into perfect, logical beings, and in doing so, had lost the ability to think outside their rigid parameters. "Status on Operation Trojan?" she asked, turning to Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who led the biological engineering team. Yuki looked up from her station, excitement visible in her eyes. "The biomimetic suits are ready. We've successfully replicated their crystalline exoskeleton structure down to the quantum resonance patterns they use for authentication. As long as our people can control their heart rates and body temperature, the Quelgroth's bioscanners won't detect anything amiss." On the main screen, another wave of Quelgroth probes attempted to penetrate Earth's orbital defense grid. The aliens still hadn't realized that what they thought were primitive satellites were actually nodes in a quantum entanglement network, using principles the Quelgroth had dismissed as theoretically impossible. "Message from the Chinese quantum computing team," announced Lieutenant Weizhang. They finished their analysis of the Quelgroth command protocols. The aliens use a hierarchical network architecture, completely predictable and vulnerable once you understand their base assumptions. Sarah moved to the central planning table, where a detailed hologram of the Quelgroth flagship materialized. Their arrogance makes them predictable. They're so convinced of their superiority that they never developed cybersecurity beyond their quantum encryption. They literally cannot imagine that we could understand their technology, let alone subvert it. The room's atmosphere was tense but confident. Humanity had spent the 3 years since discovering the scout ship preparing for this moment. While the Quelgroth saw only primitive radio signals and chemical rockets, Earth's nations had secretly united to develop countermeasures to every aspect of Quelgroth technology. "Team Alpha is ready for deployment," reported Colonel Maya Patel, commander of the Infiltration unit. On the screen behind her, 6 figures stood in their biomimetic suits, looking exactly like Quelgroth maintenance drones. "The captured scout ship's database gave us everything we need to know about their internal protocols and social structure." Sarah studied the tactical display. The Quelgroth fleet maintained their perfect formation, still probing Earth's defenses with increasingly frustrated attempts. They hadn't yet launched a direct attack, likely because their rigid military doctrine required them to fully understand an opponent before engaging. "Their next logical step will be to send boarding parties to our orbital stations," Sarah predicted. "They'll want to capture our primitive technology intact for study. That's our window." As if on cue, the Quelgroth fleet began repositioning. Their smaller vessels moved toward Earth's orbital installations, preparing for what they thought would be a simple operation to overwhelm primitive human defenses. They're following their standard conquest protocols exactly as the scout ship's database indicated they would, Maya observed, predictable to the last. Sarah touched a control, and a new hologram appeared, a detailed simulation of the Quelgroth flagship's interior. The infiltration team will board during the confusion of their first boarding action. They expect us to be in chaos, trying to defend our stations. They won't be watching for an attack on their flagship. The room fell silent as Sarah looked at each team leader in turn. The Quelgroth think they're dealing with primitive savages who barely understand radio waves. Their sensors are looking for primitive human biology and primitive human weapons. They've already dismissed our quantum technology as sensor malfunctions because it doesn't fit their understanding of our capabilities. She gestured at the hologram of the Quelgroth fleet. Their perfect, logical, predictable minds cannot accept that they might be wrong. That will be their downfall. In orbit, the Quelgroth vessels continued their methodical preparation for boarding actions, their crews confident in their superiority over the primitive humans. They never noticed the small maintenance shuttle that detached from one of Earth's primitive stations, its quantum signature exactly matching their own service vehicles. Operation Ghost had begun. The maintenance shuttle docked with the Quelgroth flagship Eternal Dominion without a single challenge. Captain Maya Patel, encased in her biomimetic suit, led her team through the airlock with practiced precision. Their crystalline exoskeletons, perfect replicas of Quelgroth maintenance drones, clicked against the obsidian deck plates. Status check. Maya subvocalized, the quantum communicator embedded in her suit transmitting on a frequency that Quelgroth considered theoretically impossible. All systems nominal, responded Dr. Marcus Wong, their tech specialist. Their internal sensors are reading us as maintenance drones. Classification Charlie 7. We have access to all maintenance corridors and secondary systems. The team moved through the massive vessel's service tunnels, their movements matching the mechanical precision of real Quelgroth drones. Above them, through gaps in the deck plates, they could see the ship's regular crew going about their duties with mathematical regularity. They're so predictable, Lieutenant Sarah Foster observed through the quantum link. Every crew member following the same paths, performing the same tasks at exactly the same intervals. No variation, no adaptation. That's their weakness, Maya replied. They've optimized themselves into a corner. Maximum efficiency, zero flexibility. The team reached their first objective, a secondary computer core. Marcus interfaced with the system, his neural implants, disguised from Quelgroth scans by the biomimetic suit, connecting with their quantum networks. I'm in, he reported. Their security is exactly as predicted. They're so convinced of the perfection of their quantum encryption that they never considered alternative attack vectors. Uploading the virus now. The virus was a masterpiece of human ingenuity, a program that looked exactly like normal Quelgroth code to their security systems, but contained hidden subroutines that would activate on command. It spread through the ship's network, masquerading as routine maintenance updates. Bridge is reporting increased boarding operations, Lieutenant Raj Patel reported, monitoring the ship's internal communications. They're sending teams to all major Earth orbital stations. Still no idea we're already inside their flagship. Maya led the team deeper into the vessel, toward their primary target, the main engineering section. Along the way, they passed dozens of Quelgroth crew members, none of whom gave the apparent maintenance drones a second glance. The aliens' rigid social structure made maintenance workers virtually invisible. Reading increased power fluctuations, Dr. Elena Popov, their engineering specialist, reported. They're charging weapons. Looks like they're getting frustrated with our orbital defenses. The team reached the massive doors of main engineering. In theory, maintenance drones weren't allowed inside without specific authorization. But Marcus had already inserted false work orders into the system. The doors slid open. Inside, engineering was a cathedral of advanced technology. Quantum reactors pulsed with impossible energies, controlled by Quelgroth engineers who moved through their tasks like living computers. Begin Phase 2, Maya ordered. The team split up, each member moving to predetermined positions around the vast chamber. To the Quelgroth engineers, they were simply performing routine maintenance. In reality, they were placing quantum resonance devices, tiny machines that could interact with the ship's power systems in ways the Quelgroth believed impossible. Devices planted, Elena reported. Ready for activation on your mark. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Maya's heart rate spiked, but the biomimetic suit compensated, maintaining their disguise. Multiple hull breaches detected in Earth orbital stations. Raj translated from the ship's communications. The boarding teams, they're reporting failure. Complete failure. Human resistance far beyond predicted parameters. Through the quantum link, Maya could almost feel Dr. Chen's satisfaction back on Earth. The Quelgroth boarding teams had just discovered that Earth's primitive orbital stations were crewed entirely by combat androids, their human life signs perfectly simulated to fool Quelgroth scans. Admiral Zextal is ordering full battle stations, Raj continued. They're finally realizing something's wrong. Maya allowed herself a grim smile inside her suit. Too late. Marcus, activate the virus. Elena, power up the resonance devices. Let's show them how primitive humans wage war. Throughout the massive flagship, hidden commands began to execute. Security systems subtly redirected. Power conduits preparing to redirect their massive energies. And in every computer core, Quelgroth control protocols began to quietly rewrite themselves. The perfect, logical, predictable Quelgroth were about to learn that they weren't the only ones who could hack a quantum network. Admiral Zextal's perfect composure had completely shattered. Around him, the bridge of the Eternal Dominion descended into what the Quelgroth would consider chaos. Crew members moving with unnecessary haste, voices raised above their optimal efficiency levels, displays showing impossible data. All boarding teams have failed to secure the human stations. Tactical Officer Myrtle reported, his crystalline exoskeleton vibrating with stress. The stations were empty, automated. We detected life signs, but they were false. Impossible, Zextal repeated, but the word had lost its certainty. They're primitive. Their technology is primitive. Our scans confirmed. Sir, Communications Officer Relta interrupted, we're losing contact with the outer fleet vessels. Some kind of cascading system failure. The bridge lights flickered. Just for a moment, but it was enough to freeze every Quelgroth in place. Their ships didn't have system failures. Their technology was perfect. In main engineering, Maya's team watched through their biomimetic suits as the quantum resonance devices began their work. The massive power conduits that fed the ship's systems pulsed with new patterns, patterns that the Quelgroth systems read as normal but were slowly, inexorably, changing the very nature of the ship's quantum network. Virus has reached stage 3, Marcus reported through their quantum link. Ship's AI is completely subverted. They still see everything as normal, but we have effective control of all major systems. Elena, status on the power grid, Maya asked. Ready for primary sequence, Elena replied. The resonance devices have synchronized. On your mark, we can initiate the quantum cascade. Maya opened a channel to Earth Command. Dr. Chen, we're in position. The flagship is compromised. Awaiting your order. In the underground facility, Sarah Chen studied the tactical displays. The Quelgroth fleet's perfect formation was beginning to show signs of strain as ship after ship fell under human control through the quantum virus. Execute primary sequence, she ordered. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. Maya gave the signal. Throughout the Eternal Dominion, hidden commands activated. The quantum resonance devices pulsed in perfect harmony, creating energy patterns that the Quelgroth had dismissed as theoretically impossible. On the bridge, every display suddenly changed. The alien script transformed into human languages. Every system, every control, every piece of technology that the Quelgroth had considered perfect and inviolable now responded to human commands. This is impossible, Admiral Zextal whispered, staring at his command console as it displayed English text. We are superior. Our technology is perfect. Our evolution is perfect. Actually, came a human voice from behind him. Your perfection is your weakness. The Admiral turned to find what appeared to be a maintenance drone, shedding its crystalline exterior, revealing the human in an advanced technological suit. Around the bridge, other drones were doing the same. Maya stood before the Admiral, her suit now showing its true nature, a hybrid of human and Quelgroth technology that the aliens had considered impossible. You engineered away everything that makes organic life resilient, she explained. You chose perfect predictability over adaptability. You became so convinced of your superiority that you couldn't even conceive of being wrong. Through the view screens, they could see other Quelgroth ships starting to move in new patterns, their perfect formation dissolving as human-controlled vessels began to systematically isolate and contain the remaining alien-controlled ships. Your technology is impressive, Maya continued, but technology isn't everything. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our tools. It's our ability to adapt, to think creatively, to do things that your perfect, logical minds would consider impossible. Alarms blared throughout the ship as more systems fell under human control. The Quelgroth crew stood frozen, their enhanced minds unable to process a scenario that violated everything they believed about their own superiority. Admiral Zextal. Dr. Chen's voice came through the ship's communications, now fully under Earth's control. I suggest you order your remaining vessels to stand down. As you can see, we're not quite as primitive as you thought. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching his perfect fleet fall piece by piece to an enemy he had dismissed as beneath concern. In that moment, he experienced something his species had engineered away generations ago: humility. 2 months after the surrender of the Quelgroth fleet, the Great Hall of the United Nations buzzed with an energy unlike anything in human history. Representatives from Earth's nations sat alongside Quelgroth officials, the latter still struggling to adapt to a reality where their assumptions about the universe had been completely upended. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, addressing the historic gathering. Behind her, through the massive windows, several captured Quelgroth vessels hung in the sky, their once perfect obsidian hulls now bearing the UN insignia. The integration of Quelgroth quantum technology with human innovation has opened doors we never imagined possible, she announced. But more importantly, it has taught both our species valuable lessons about the true nature of advancement. In the audience, Admiral Zextal sat with other Quelgroth leaders, their crystalline exoskeletons modified to allow for more natural movement. The rigid perfection that had defined their species for generations was beginning to show the first signs of change. The Quelgroth achieved incredible technological advancement, Sarah continued, but in pursuing perfect efficiency, they lost something essential: the beautiful chaos of organic adaptation. Humanity, in contrast, never sought perfection. We embraced our contradictions, our inefficiencies, our ability to think in ways that defy pure logic. Maya Patel, now heading the Joint Human-Quelgroth Technology Integration Program, watched from her seat as several young Quelgroth scientists demonstrated their latest project. They moved with slightly less mechanical precision than their elders, showing subtle signs of rediscovering their species' long-suppressed capacity for creative thinking. Our victory wasn't about superior technology or military might, Sarah explained. It was about understanding that true advancement comes not from eliminating our organic nature, but from embracing it. The Quelgroth sought to engineer away uncertainty. Humanity learned to thrive in it. The demonstration showed a new type of quantum drive, one that combined Quelgroth precision with human intuition. It broke all the rules that the Quelgroth had once considered immutable, achieving things their perfect logic had dismissed as impossible. But perhaps the greatest victory, Sarah continued, isn't in the technology we've gained or the threats we've overcome. It's in what we're learning from each other. The Quelgroth are rediscovering the value of adaptation and creativity, while humanity is learning to temper our chaos with greater understanding. In the months since the surrender, the younger generation of Quelgroth had shown remarkable changes. Working alongside humans, they began to question their species' rigid adherence to perfect efficiency. Some had even started experimenting with removing portions of their quantum enhancements, seeking a balance between organic and artificial evolution. Today, we sign not just a peace treaty, but a declaration of joint purpose, Sarah announced. Humanity and the Quelgroth, working together to explore the galaxy not as perfect beings, but as fellow travelers on the road of evolution. Admiral Zextel rose to join her at the podium. His movements were different now, less mechanical, more natural. My species thought we had reached the peak of evolution, he addressed the gathering. We were wrong. The humans showed us that true evolution never ends. It is not about reaching perfection, but about maintaining the ability to change, to adapt, to see possibilities beyond the logical. The Admiral gestured to the Earth visible through the windows. We came to this world believing we would find primitives. Instead, we found teachers. The humans showed us that what we saw as weaknesses, emotion, creativity, intuition, are actually the greatest strengths any species can possess. As the treaty was signed, a new chapter began. The Quelgroth fleet that had arrived as conquerors would depart as allies, forever changed by their encounter with a species they had dismissed as primitive. And humanity, armed with new technology and ancient wisdom, stood ready to take its place among the stars. Maya caught Sarah's eye across the room and smiled. They had done more than defeat an invasion. They had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't perfect technology or logical efficiency. It was the beautiful, chaotic, endless capacity of life to adapt, to change,